Okay, so if we look at how regulation is playing out across the globe, there's a very uneven level of application of regulation. It's not consistent between different jurisdictions. So what impact is that having on banks? How are they reacting to it?
So it's clearly having a huge impact. I mean, the cost of complying with regulation is huge. We think that about 10% of every bank's operating expenses is going to meeting regulatory requirements. Mm-hmm. And globally that amounts to about $270 billion a year.
Wow. And
then if you think about it, the pace of regulatory change isn't slowing down. Last year alone, for example, there were over 20,000 new regulatory requirements built. On the other hand, we need to be careful because whilst this is a massive cost and focus for the banks, there's a need for regulation too to really build transparency into the banking system. Mm-hmm. And to make sure that customers trust the banks that they're doing business with. But having said that, I mean, we strongly believe that there are very important ways for banks to be able to take cost out by automating processes, automating the collection of the data, automating the dissemination of the regulations so that they are able to do it in a much more efficient way and turn their attention to what the true risks are of the banks versus how much time it's taking them today just to know what the new regs are and make sure that they stay in compliance with them.
Take any one area. So take anti-money laundering.
Yeah.
You know, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Well, most banks generate alerts around AML activity. And it turns out 95% of those are what they would call false positives, meaning it was a perfectly legitimate transaction, but someone had to run off because there was an alert. Yep. Analyze what was going on and say, yeah, no, that's okay for the flower shop to be sending money to the pizza place.
Sure.
You scale that up. This is how you end up with these huge expenses. And the question is, how do you apply advanced analytics to automate that process? Mm-hmm. So you don't need people to do the case management. You can do that through computer science, artificial intelligence, advanced analytics, automation, and become much more efficient.
And also learn quickly, right? So learn quickly from alerts that are false positives and make sure that you're not repeating that mistake.
Yeah, if a bank was meant to submit an SAR and they don't, the consequences are so high.
Yeah.
And this is impacting customer experience as well. So again, the number of false positives, the speed with which you're able to deal with them. I mean, how many of us have been in shops and found that our credit cards have been declined because we're doing something a little bit different from what we've normally done, and it's just a very horrible place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, another area that's I can see this working effectively for banks potentially is in cyber. I mean, firms are currently under siege from cyber attacks, but as they move from digital to a cognitive business, how are they going to manage the ability to defend themselves? How are they going to defend their assets in this situation?
The first thing I think as a bank you have to do is take a risk-based approach. Mm-hmm. So you have to decide where the greatest risks are. Having identified that and having decided on an approach, absolutely, right, they're under siege. And you do see some collaboration in the marketplace. We work very closely with FS-ISAC. Mm-hmm. They have done a great job in bringing together cyber activity and sharing it across banks. IBM has our X-Force Exchange. They too real-time identify cyber threats and distribute that information globally. It's critically important. Then I think what's happening is you get into more advanced problems. And so a lot of banks are worried about insider threat. Right? Yeah. How do you identify insider threat? And you see again, the challenge is a problem where against a lot of normal activity, you're trying to identify an abnormal behavior or pattern. Mm-hmm. So, one way of doing that is to look at role-based behavior. So, okay, Dan, imagine you're a personal banker for a moment.
Sure.
You wish.
You look dressed for the part. So, if you're a personal banker, there's certain behavior that you would exhibit, right, in your normal day.
Yeah.
If you go outside of that pattern, this would be something that might generate a cyber alert and be investigated.
So this plays to the cognitive pitch, doesn't it?
It does indeed, and you know, rather like Ian was saying, another one of the pieces is where, you know, we've got cognitive technology doing a lot of research around information which is out there in the public domain. At the moment, it's very much still ingesting a lot of data, and the computer is getting more and more adept with drawing insights out of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're going to be in a position very shortly to be able to provide that to a lot of you know, clients around the world, so that they are, you know, ahead of the game. And again, as Ian was saying, you know, we're able to inform other places that these sorts of, you know, that there is an attack on in one place. But the other thing in this area, Dan, which is kind of very different from some of the other areas around crime, is the amount of investment that's going into what the bad guys are putting together.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, you know, a very professional business on a massive scale that is being run by these particular people, and they're innovating in the kind of way that you'll see traditional industry, not traditional, but, you know, big professional industry. Yeah, these are absolutely.
They have organizational charts. They have product development individuals. They have people deploying. It's almost like a business. I mean, it is a business.
And you know, they've got distribution that's staggering. I mean, there's like an Amazon type of capability. You know, you can go on there and you can buy what you want in terms of cybercrime. I mean, it's quite frightening in terms of what's actually going on. The other thing also is a lot of this is, you know, you could have a bank that's been attacked and it then lies dormant for quite a long period of time.
As in the
So the
attack.
malware sits
yeah.
in the system and isn't detected for a period of time.
Indeed.
Right.
In fact, on average, it's like 6 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly long time that these persistent threats can. Why do they do that? Because they know, you know, there's several stages to an attack, right? The first is intrusion.
Mm-hmm.
Second is sort of identifying and moving around the infrastructure of the bank. So the malware will literally map out your systems and your technology, and then essentially develop its own approach to how it's going to bypass the process. Only then will it actually take credentials, try and move money, and at that point, it could be 6 months later.
Wow.
And this is why collaboration, like Ian was saying, I think is really very important, because the moment you detect that something that has been lying dormant for a period of time is, you know, has or is going live, then it's important that that's communicated across the industry as a whole, because it could be, well, you know, it could have infested into other places.
You know, it's fascinating to go into our cyber intelligence operations centers and just watch what goes on. You can literally see the attacks being launched out of Eastern Europe. You can see them land. If you can address those in an automated way, on average it takes less than 7 seconds to be able to identify, remediate and correct and prevent any further attack.
As compared to what for manual?
Manual could be minutes, days, hours, weeks, depending on how complex the problem is.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, the operational discipline around cybersecurity is really important. What you don't want is someone hanging on to a problem they can't really solve.
Yeah.
Because time matters, speed matters. The ability to segment a problem, mitigate the problem and correct it, all of that becomes a bigger challenge the longer you wait typically.
Okay.
Where do you think banks place cybersecurity at the moment in terms of their risk continuum?
Well, it's definitely at the board level. I mean, you know, there's not a board that hasn't been asking these questions, and of course, every day, you know, these cyber attacks seem to get larger and larger. I mean, you know, they've moved into hundreds of millions of records, and some statistics on this suggest every record that's compromised costs a bank at least $200. So you multiply that math out, and you begin to see how much expense is being associated with cybercrime. That's just on the prevention. You know, you got the losses as well.
Yeah. And so they're looking at defence at almost a state level, I understand, in terms of what they need. It's the same sort of defence you'd expect from the government, you'd expect from some of the large multinational banks.
Yeah, you could even argue higher standards at this point.
Yeah.
Based on some of the you know, recent news around state agencies. So
yeah.
Yeah, the banks, look, this is fundamental to trust and integrity, right? Which has always been a cornerstone to banking, right? I mean, the whole notion of you know, when you give money, right? What is it? It's digital now. It's just it's sitting in a computer somewhere. with electrons spinning.
Yeah.
So if you don't have trust and integrity in that approach, you don't have banking. So this is so fundamental to get right.